self-actualization is the pinnacle. I feel like it's always going to be aspirational, but there's certain things you have to have in place in your life to consider yourself someone going to somewhere. And so the way it is in the pyramid, it's you love others, you love yourself.
So Chenai and I decided to run a young professionals leadership summit. So she's helped me out, and we're doing this together along with someone else that's is helping us. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of the RK Leadership Podcast, where we help empower tomorrow's leaders through the sharing of knowledge, experience, and inspiring stories. I'm your host, Rob Cameronpour, and my special guest today is Chenai Kadungure.
Yes.
And Chenai is a keynote speaker. She's Canada's top 100 Black women to watch. She's an Aga Khan global leader and an executive director at the Black Physicians Associations of Ontario. Before I pass it on to you, I want to thank you so much for being here with me today and accepting to share your story and your knowledge with the audience. Welcome to RK Leadership Podcast, and thank you again for being here today with me.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Rob.
Awesome. So let's get right into it, Chenai. I want to ask you, you've got a lot of experience under your belt. Why don't you tell us your story and how you got here?
Ooh. Okay, that's a loaded question. I would say this is the sixth city. Toronto is the sixth city that I've lived in.
Nice.
And the fourth country that I've lived in. And I'm originally Zimbabwean. A lot of people don't know where Zimbabwe is. It's directly above South Africa. So I've come a long way. And I left Zimbabwe when I was 18 to go for a university in South Africa. But it's also because in the 90s, in the late 90s, going into the 2000s, Zimbabwe went through a lot of upheaval. A lot of political things happen about land grabbing, and depends who you ask the history of it.
That's right.
But all to say, by the year 2002, it was pretty clear that most people were going to be sort of like leaving the country, those who had mobility for a better life. And so I did my undergrad in Cape Town, South Africa, University of Cape Town.
Amazing. And
then I did my first job in Johannesburg. So I was in South Africa 11 years. So I was all things Africa go. I've always worked in nonprofits, but I got to a critical point in 2015 where I just felt like something was pulling me here. I just knew this region of the world was the next thing. I had reached a bit of a glass ceiling where I was working, and I applied for a whole bunch of different things, and I got what's called a Rotary Peace Fellowship, a scholarship, full ride.
Nice.
An amazing blessing, and I was in North Carolina, so I went to Duke, UNC, Chapel Hill. Most people love Michael Jordan, so we share an alma mater. But I will say, it was crazy being in North Carolina during Trump's first Trump's first term.
Nice.
So yeah. I got to America, and then all hell kind of broke loose. So it was a crazy 2 years there, and then I received permanent residency to come here, and that's where, to me, it seems like the real story ended up beginning. Because being a newcomer in Toronto it's always a story of resilience, of challenges, of starting over in the worst way possible.
That's right.
And in the hardest way possible. And so for me, it's like 2018. That was a defining and refining time for me. So everything has changed since then, but that was a year where I think I understood rock bottom. I understood burnout, depression, the works. Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so you started off in Africa, went to the States, then in Canada. So now you're dealing with multiple cultures. How do you deal with the differences in culture, and how did you get adjusted to the culture here?
I don't know if I've even adjusted yet. What are you talking about? Canada, they talk about Canadian niceness.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've met a lot of African people, but nice is not exactly how you describe how we converse about a lot of things. I think we're very direct, and I think Canadian niceness is very indirect. And so for me, that was a bit of a challenge on the early days. Zimbabwe was colonized by the British, so we still we understood the British nuances of things, but I felt like when you now get to the North American side of it, there is an inauthenticity around some of the things. There's some things people will say to be polite, but it's not necessarily true. So people would say things like, oh, we should do tea sometime. And it's something you say to say, oh, this isn't a pleasant conversation. We don't necessarily need to actually do tea sometime. I'm a literal person, so I was like, when are we doing tea? And it's like, so for me, there was a bit of that, I think, in the transition. And then also even just adjusting to things you see. We have homeless people and things like that in Zimbabwe, but I think it was just very different. The concept of even, say, taking public transport back home growing up, the last time I probably took public transport, we have these minivans that are called combis, and you have these conductor type people who are just, the personalities are just really, really, extroverted and funny, and it's always an adventure. But then now you've got TTC, and that's a different kind of adventure.
That's right, it sure is.
And let's not talk about the winter. The winter! That is something I'm still getting used to. I mean, climate change has kind of made it a shorter winter, so that's a hard transition. But I'd say the biggest, hardest transition is this whole thing of Canadian work experience, and being someone who has a lot of skills and you basically go back to zero essentially on arrival. So that is very humbling, and I don't think anyone's ever ready for it.
No, absolutely. So you talked about resiliency. Mm-hmm. So I want to kind of go down that road a little bit. Yeah. I want you to tell us again, through your story, what were some of the difficult times in your life that helped you build the resiliency that you have today?
Whew. Oh, yeah. Well, starting out, my father passed away when I was 17. So I think there's always that thing of losing a parent. I think is one of those first really difficult times where grief is shaping you. You're not aware it's shaping you. You just kind of feel like you're moving on to the next thing. But I think that was the first kind of difficult transition. And I think it ups your empathy. I think everyone needs to have some kind of, in the journey to self-actualization, there's a struggle. There has to be some kind of difficulty that takes you to that next place. And I think for me that was one of the first ones, definitely. And then the second one, I would say the second kind of challenge was sort of being in a different country. Like when I went to South Africa, I experienced a lot of xenophobia. In South Africa, if you are a black person who is from the rest of Africa but not South African, there are times where people can kind of be a bit more, I don't want to say like cold shouldery or, so there was a bit of that. Yes. I didn't know I was Zimbabwean until I was in South Africa, if that makes sense. Like my nationality didn't matter to me growing up until I was an other, and I was like, okay, this is what it means. And so I think there's always that challenge of being an other in a place. Yeah. When I got to the States, being a minority, I was the only black person at a lot of things I went to because of the part of the country I was in. And there were some times when I realized, like, when I'm talking about something, I'm representing the whole continent, essentially. So I think that was a challenge. And then because of our economy, in undergrad, there were economic challenges. There were times when I basically had 3 jobs, and yes, I actually got very burnt out. And I remember there was a night I was at a call center doing a night shift, and I just started having a panic attack, but I didn't know what it was. I was like, am I about to die? Because I was literally alone, and I'm like, oh! And I just freaked out. But in that time, I was thinking, so many of my friends are probably out partying right now. They're not having to do this, you know.
That's
So
right.
I really felt that you know, the challenge of like feeling like you're suffering a bit. You're having a tough season, but it stays tough. So I think those have been some really critical moments. And of course, everyone's been in a toxic job before, so
Oh, for sure.
I have stories about that too.
We won't get into that one right now. But you talked about self-actualization.
Yes.
So for people that know the Maslow pyramid, it's on top of the pyramid.
Yes.
And that's what everybody thrives towards. So what does self-actualization mean to you? And do you feel like you've reached it?
I would say it depends on the day. But so for me, because self-actualization is the pinnacle, I feel like it's always going to be aspirational, but there's certain things you have to have in place in your life to consider yourself sort of like going into self. And so the way it is in the pyramid, it's you love others, you love yourself, you have a healthy self-esteem,
Yes.
you have belonging, and then you do that next thing. So I think most people don't have that. I think they say something like 10% of the people in the world are self-actualized. And so
That's right.
I would say my mindset-wise, I sit in that 10% in just being positively delusional about what I can achieve in life. And every single time I've kind of tested it out and said, can I do this? I've always then done the next thing and the next thing. So for me, the sky is not even the limit. And so I think that positive delusion,
Nice.
and not like some kind of like clinical kind of like, I honestly think that is self-actualization for me. Like waking up and thinking, hey, tomorrow I could be doing something even more amazing than this. And so I think that mindset is self-actualization for me.
Awesome. And you talked about loving yourself.
Yeah.
So again, that's very important. You know, we talk about that all the time, where you're not going to get to the level you want to get to until you start appreciating, respecting, and loving yourself. And you can't get other people to love you if you don't love yourself.
But also, what's a leader if not a person with influence?
That's right.
Right? And most people, for you to be able to volunteer, to do something where you're not getting paid, it means you are producing results where there is no, like the financial incentive is not there. So the only other incentives that are there
That's right.
are the social ones, right? So
Exactly.
for me, it's about, that's how a person can influence. So I think you can learn a lot from the volunteer positions. And I always say for young people, when we're looking at work experience, that should count. Some people don't look at volunteering, but I agree with you that someone spent 3-4 years
Yeah.
running
Huge.
something. They've run a project.
Yeah.
They have worked with a team. They've done all the things that you want the leaders in your organization to have done.
And think about from like an empathy perspective, giving back to the community, you know, let's say helping the elderly if you're working at an old age home or whatnot.
Yeah.
So there's different aspects to it, and that's what people should be starting to look at. Like HR should be looking at that. And I think if you're like a leader at a higher position, those are the things you should be looking at in resumes, instead of just, you know, based on experience that might not mean much at times, right?
But it also opens your world. People tend
Exactly.
to volunteer outside of what they're doing. Like if I work in tech,
Yes.
I'll be volunteering at like we're just saying, an old age home or something. It's so important. Like it gets your empathy muscle going, and it also gets you to learn about something outside of your situation.
And networking,
Yeah. Oh,
right? Huge.
Always.
You get to meet different people, and you never know, that person might be able to hire you
Yeah.
when you're looking for a job.
You better put the work in networking.
That's right.
Even if you're introverted, like you need to figure it out. Like networking is important.
Absolutely. So Chenai, how do you translate vision into reality as a leader?
Well, I think part of it is persisting, persisting with what you want to do. And you have to visualize it. It's literally, you have to be able to see it, to
That's
be
right.
able to do the sort of like the steps before. I do think that it is hard for a lot of people because not everyone thinks of themselves as a visionary. They think it's something that's just for that person who's at the pinnacle place in an organization or something. But I think for you to tell a story well about getting people on board with something, you have to be able to translate the vision. That's what that is.
That's
so
right.
yeah.
Now, how do you gain the following of your team or whatnot, or your community, to buy into that vision?
For me, I think what's made some of these things easy is that it's just something factually true, that if you do X, we're going to have less X, insert problem here, and everyone doesn't want to deal with that problem. So
right.
It's solving a problem, right? They say entrepreneurship is about solving problems, but I'd say any form of leadership is about that.
100%.
Because why is someone there unless there's something critical they are creating or preventing?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. What is the purpose of leadership in your opinion?
I definitely think that it's impact, right? Because if I have followers, what are they doing? Where are they following me to?
That's
Hopefully
right.
not off a cliff. So please, do not start a cult. If you're watching this and you're thinking about starting a cult, don't do it. Don't do it. Yeah.
All right. So you're one of the top 100, black women to watch. What is that in Canada? And what does that mean to you? Right? And what is that, tell us the story behind that. How did you get there?
I used to joke and say I always thought I'd end up on a different kind of watch list in life. I think for me, it goes back to the earlier point. It's the delusion. It's honestly that, we can do great things even at this level. I think the layperson has a cap on themselves. They're like, if I'm doing this and I have just enough to live, and there's a lot of survival mindset.
Yes.
And scarcity mindset. And so for me, all of that came about by actually telling people what my vision was for all these different spaces, and working especially in equity, because I think when you work in equity, you can't help but make an impact, because that's what you're focused on. You're focused on, let's solve this problem, let's do this. So I think that's how it happens, where people kind of then feel like, maybe you can do something. And I'm like, but there's nothing special about me. We can all do something.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, obviously there's something special. That's why you've gone there.
I'm delusional.
So what would your message be to all the young women out there, who aspire to, get on these lists and, become that top percentage? What's your message to them? And how do they get there?
Give a damn. As long as you give a damn, people will see what you're doing. They'll recognize the work that you're doing. People can smell inauthenticity. And they've always said that we're in a time right now where authentic leadership is what people resonate with. So if you are courageous enough to be fully yourself and fully seen as yourself, then people will appreciate what you are. Because Rob knows, I am rough around the edges. I'm not like your textbook perfectionist person and things like that. I mean, I have ADHD, so I'm limited physically in many ways, but because I give a damn, I think people just feel like I need to have more of a platform, and they offer me more opportunities. And I also have a faith, so it helps.
It absolutely.
When God's helping you out too.
That's right. I haven't seen her being rough around the edges yet. And I'm hoping not to get on her bad side, but thanks for the heads up there, Chenai. Chenai, what's the best advice that you've ever received?
To say best is hard, eh? To say best is hard, because I have to pick one.
Pick one that's really impacted you in your life.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be career, your life.
Don't self-reject. When it comes to applying for things, looking at opportunities, don't cancel yourself out before the place that you're applying to has done that. I think women are more likely to not apply for a job if they are missing even one of the 10 things required. And I think we just have to have a bit more audacity. We have to just say, hey, I only have 6 out of the 10, but maybe the other 4 won't matter. Like, giving it a shot anyway. Like, you You can, they say you can only win the lottery if you buy a ticket.
That's right.
So many people are not buying a ticket. Like, buy the ticket. Like, apply for things. Anything that's in your head about, like, I'm thinking maybe I'd like to do that someday. Someday is tomorrow a lot of the times. So
someday should be today. Right?
Today.
Take
there we
action
go.
now.
Some days today.
Yeah. So you're also a keynote speaker. And one of the things with the young audience out there, and I've heard this from many people, they like to learn how to speak in public, do presentations. What are some tips or tricks that you have that's helped you along in your career, and now you're confident and comfortable to speak in front of everybody and openly? What's helped you?
Right at the beginning, deciding that you have something to say that they need to hear. Because I think a lot of the times the fear, when people have the fear, it's like, who am I that I should say something to these people? Or, it goes back into that thing of like, you're like the limiting talk. So for me, it's that the minute I go on, I say I have something of value to say and add. And so that's one of the things that gives the confidence. Then the other, I think, is the authority that comes in still that loving yourself thing. I think when they were talking about executive presence, the highest percentage of what counted as executive presence, all the gravitas and all that they were saying, is authenticity. Again.
That's right.
So it's not even, we think it's pretty words, we think it's loudness, we think all these different things, and it's not that. It's just, if you're speaking from the heart, people will connect.
That's right. It resonates, right? So how do you control that nervousness before going onto a big stage? Do you have like a habit, ritual? I know, Tony Robbins likes to jump up and down. Some people they meditate. What do you do before going on a big stage?
I pray. I definitely say like, I need help. I need this. I need something bigger than me to support me. But also breathing, because I think we forget that when we're stressed or anxious about something, we forget to breathe. And so it's like, how you feel here, it really matters. So it's like 2-3 deep breaths, and then when you're now speaking, remembering to breathe helps as well.
Don't get clogged in your lungs there.
And a bit of Amy Cuddy sometimes. Power pose.
Power pose. Absolutely. That always helps. So the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is, so Chenai and I decided to run a Young Professionals Leadership Summit. So she's, helped me out, and we're doing this together along with someone else is helping us. I want you to talk to us about that summit that's coming up this fall, by the way, October 19th, for everyone out there. Talk to us a little bit about the summit. What should the audience or the people attending expect, and what are you hoping the outcome of the event will be?
Yeah, so people should expect to learn a lot. We have speakers from across different sectors, but also they should expect to be inspired, because I think a large part of doing that next big thing in your career is to just, get some of the good juices flowing, right? So in that day, there's going to be some good energy and knowledge that's going to be imparted by people, seasoned experts across sectors, but also people at varying levels of leadership. So you've got a combination of young speakers and older speakers as well. So you've got everyone talking from experience, but also people talking from, hey, I've just done this. I've just gone through this. And we have, several speakers. I don't even know the number. So many speakers.
That's right.
But people who are early in their careers, early career professionals, or new in trying to figure out what their career is, I think I would love for a lot of them to be there, because some of this is going to guide where they're going. Because I think everyone has limited knowledge about how to get into some of these exciting sectors as well. And so we have a lot of that.
And Chenai is also one of the keynote speakers at this event, so we're
You'll
very
get to
excited.
see it in action. You'll see my Amy Cuddy in action.
That's right. What made you participate in this event and wanting to be a part of it and wanting to, kind of help out with the whole ordeal? what were your thoughts behind it?
There is a terrible person called Rob. We were talking about this very podcast, and I don't know how, at some point I think Rob talked about wanting to do something for young people in particular. And I said, I've worked with a lot of youth, and I really connect with youth. I mean, I am very young at heart, so. And so, yeah, it's something I always wanted to do as well. And so when he said, I'm going to do it, I was like, okay, let's do it. And that's it. I mean, this is literally a case in point of vision into reality. It was a conversation, and now it's a whole thing, right? And
Absolutely.
Really amazing lineup of people coming. So that's what I think happened. It was just, I'm always going to be available for good things, for things that will help people get a leg up. Amazing. Because they need it. Yeah.
Amazing. I'm very grateful for you, by the way, for helping out. Because a lot of people talk about it, Chenai. Mm-hmm. Very little people will actually put in the time, put in the energy and the effort. But you actually walk the talk. So I do consider you as a very good leader. Respectful leader. Respectful leader.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem. So the other question I had for you is, what is the one advice you would give the young professionals out there who want to get into leadership role? Where do they start?
Make a lot of friends. Having mentors for me was a game changer, because you are effectively learning from someone who has so much more experience than you, right? They can help you prevent, not so much prevent, not make the same mistakes they did. I think that's the best way of saying. So when you're working with mentors, if they have 20 years of experience and you have 2, you are getting the extra 18 from them. You don't have to actually go through it. That's right. And so I have found mentorship has been such an accelerator for my career. And I think the step above mentor is sponsor, right? You get people who then actually create opportunities for you. And I try to be that for a lot of people in my life. If I go into a room and there's something that benefits someone who's not in the room, I will name them. I'm that person who will name someone who's not in the room. So I think that makes a difference. Like, make sure you have good mentors. People where you'd like to be the stage they're at someday, like, connect with them. You'll be amazed how many people are willing to help. And vocalize your dreams and desires. I've known lots of friends who got offered a job after just talking to someone at like a networking event. Most recently, a friend had bumped into her now boss at like some conference. So the sky is not even the limit. Keep insisting on that.
Amazing. Mm. Awesome. So we've come to a segment where I call it the rapid fire question.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a series of questions. Oof. And you give me whatever that comes to your mind first. Okay. So not a lot of thinking that's required for this one.
Thank God.
So I was looking at your life motto is service above self. What does that mean to you?
That is being a servant leader as much as possible. Like, whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm getting involved in must impact many more people than just me. So it's about not being self-serving, but serving others is a way I serve self.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome. How do we empower young leaders?
Treat them like actual leaders, first of all. And I would say especially now, creating environments that they're asking for. I think young people tell us all the time the things they need.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's just actually listening and working with them through that.
Awesome. So you partially answered this question. How important is mentorship? Mm. Are you ever too old to have a mentor?
No. Because you're never too old to learn. Don't listen to that old dog new tricks things. I know people who went and got degrees in their 80s. You're never.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. So one question I'd like to add on here, mm-hmm. and I've got a lot of fans from Africa, right? And one of the questions, one thing they want to do all the time, Chenai, is they want to become that leader, mm-hmm. to help the country out. Mm-hmm. Because as you know firsthand, there's a lot of struggles in certain areas, and they're always asking, like, you know, how do I become a leader? I have no resources, no money to get training. What are your advice to people from back home?
So interestingly, one of my past jobs was growing small businesses in South Africa. And one of the things we found out is when working with a lot of entrepreneurs, mindset is what produced the most results. People would come and start the program thinking it's I don't have enough money or I don't have enough staff, or there was always a resource thing. There was always this lack is the reason.
Yes.
But the solution was always the work they did, the inner work they did, I would say, more than anything. So I think we underestimate what we already have. Even if your hand is seemingly empty.
That's right.
It's never empty. You have a friend, you have even an idea is something. So you always have something. So I definitely think it's that. It's the mindset of what is doesn't have to be what will be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to talk on behalf of Chenai right now, and I'm going to put this out to our audience from Africa.
All right.
And I'm going to tell them that Chenai and I are going to do a future event in Africa.
Oh, of course.
Together.
Of course, yes.
Done.
We're coming.
We promise. That's a promise. So I'm making a pledge,
Okay.
and I want you to be a part of it.
I'm on the hook for it now. All right.
And I'm stating this right in the podcast, and it's not even in the script or anything like that. So, I appreciate that. So the last question for you is, where can people find Chenai?
That's a loaded question. Okay, but I'm imagining you mean contact-wise.
That's right.
All right. My Instagram is at Chenkad. It's at CHENKAD. And just my name for LinkedIn. Those are two good places to find me. I'm working on a website, but like all things ADHD, you have to just, I'll have to be patient. But it's coming.
We'll get there. Again, I want to take this opportunity to thank you so much for being with me today and sharing your valuable knowledge, experience, and your inspiring stories with the audience. Thank you so much. And for all those out there, tune in for the next podcast. And if you've got any questions for Chenai, drop it in the box below, and I'll make sure either it gets to her or you can reach out to her directly. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.